this is where children and their parents are being targeted for the big pharmaceutical cartel, because the same people that control the arms companies control the pharmaceutical cartel. And here's the story. As media freaks out over 159 media cases, well, they also own the media as well, which is why that's their propaganda arm. Thousands of kids sold as sex slaves out of foster care. So if you ever needed a clearer example, the story says, of the mainstream media's intentions in this country, America, but see elsewhere, you need to compare the amount of coverage given to the 2019 measles non-crisis used to bolster vaccine manufacturers' bottom lines, while calling for the silencing of those who advocate for vaccine safety, versus the 18,000 children who will go missing from government-run protection care this year, many of whom will be sold into sex slavery. As the Google trend analysis below shows, the former received a ridiculous amount of coverage, while the latter received almost zero. So, again, these things that appear to be bewildering are perfectly and simply explainable. The agenda, the outcome, is designed to be mandatory vaccination and mandatory drugging of the entire human population. That's where this is planned to lead. And so now we are seeing more and more impositions of mandatory vaccination in many areas of the system. And in Australia, they've got this outrageous scam where they are taking benefits away from parents who won't have their children vaccinated according to what the government says they should have. Actually make that what the pharmaceutical cartel says they should have. And of course, the number of vaccines goes on increasing. And the still developing immune systems of these children are begging for bloody mercy. So that's why the media, owned by the same people that ultimately own the pharmaceutical cartel and the arms companies, are pushing hysterically mandatory vaccinations and attacking people that question vaccines. This is why YouTube, owned by the same people that own you get the picture, are demonetized and will eventually seek to delete anti-vaccination information on YouTube. This is why the media go crazy, because they're just pushing an agenda. But 18,000 kids going missing every year from government protection care systems, and it's the same will be found all over the world, not least in Britain, in terms of children in, quote, care who end up in paedophile rings. That's part of the agenda too, because this elite are rampant paedophiles, a ridiculous percentage of them, for reasons I explain in the books. And so why would a media owned by these people be wanting to highlight children going missing from the protection system when that's what's meant to happen on behalf of the people that own the media and own the pharmaceutical cartel and own the armament companies and own governments? There are so many fewer questions once you realize how this whole thing works. Unless, this story goes on, unless you've been under a rock lately, well, that's where most of the people that run the world come from, under a bloody stone. Unless you've been under a rock lately, you've probably noticed the utter hysteria over the measles epidemic being shoved down the collective throats of America. If one were to unquestioningly buy into said hysteria, you'd think a deadly epidemic is sweeping the nation and children are dropping dead left, right, and centre. But that's simply not true, and the reality is there is no epidemic and no one has died. According to the current numbers from the CDC, the kind of health overseer in America, the Centers for Disease Control, they're called, there have been just 159 people in the country to report contracting the measles in 10 states. As a result of the hysterical coverage, however, a widespread war on those who advocate for informed consent has been waged. For a few dozen cases of measles, Washington has declared a state of emergency and media coverage has been devoted around the clock. To reiterate, as of February 21, 2019, there were only 159 cases of measles confirmed in the entire country, prompting hysteria. But when 18,000 kids a year go missing, many of them being sold into sex slavery, we hear nothing but crickets from the same people. It's true, the story says, that some of these kids will run away, others will escape to get away from abuse, and some will be involved with the wrong crowd and follow along. However, many others are outright stolen or kidnapped and end up being sold on the black market like a commodity. Now, that paragraph I know to be true from my own research into this, which was intensive for many years, in both America and Britain and other parts of the world, including Australia. So a very significant percentage of these 18,000 disappear into these rings. Anyone care? Well, not the media, for a start, because they want to shut that down. And let me give you an example of that. This is a story in the Daily Mail, which has male newspapers in Britain have a record of seeking to stick the lid on paedophilia exposure when it involves the rich and famous. And here's a headline: "Call off this muckraking," says Mail. "I mean, we don't want to investigate political paedophilia. Move along now, nothing to see here." Well, that's the headline that I wrote, actually. And this is what the story says. It's by a bloke called Richard Littlejohn, Dick Littlejohn, and the independent inquiry into child sex abuse finally got underway yesterday, a mere 6.5 years after self-appointed nonce finder. Yeah, he's a bright guy, Richard Littlejohn, you know. General Tom Watson set the ball rolling. Well, you know, it's Tom Watson is the deputy leader of the Labour Party and a man who's driving this anti-Semitism thing in the Labour Party. Because Littlejohn doesn't know what he's bloody talking about. But basically what he's saying is that these famous people, like the former Prime Minister of Britain, Ted Heath, and a former government minister called Leon Britton, shouldn't be being investigated posthumously by this inquiry. And they should just all let it go away. Well, Littlejohn, you're an idiot, mate. If we don't uncover what's happened in the past, we won't understand what's happening now, because it hasn't ended. Of course, it's still going on. You know, all these thousands of kids go missing from the American so-called care system, and large numbers from the British care system and other care systems around the world. Where do you think they're going, mate? Well, by the way, you know, paedophilia exists? Oh, yeah, I suppose it does, yeah. Well, are politicians immune to it then? Are they like a zone that would never be involved in paedophile activity? Of course not. The idea is, and what you get from my own research is when you go into these so-called upper levels of society and these power levels of society, the ratio of paedophilia goes up, again for reasons I explain in the books. But there's the male watching their backs as always. Absolutely disgusting. Talking about watching their backs is a politician in Britain called Cyril Smith. He's left us now. God knows where he must be. Who was a serial child abuser, and this child sex abuse investigation, which Little John says, oh, it's taken all these years. It's the last got under. Why do you think, you idiot, it's taken so long? It's had so many spanners thrown in its works. The current Prime Minister of Britain, Theresa May, was Home Secretary when it was all being set up, and she was suggesting people to lead the committee that was so outrageous and so compromised in terms of the subject and the people they would have been investigating, that they had to stand down. And of course that delayed and delayed and delayed it. God, these people, they call themselves journalists. Do we still have a Trade Descriptions Act where you can't describe something you're not and sell it? Apparently not, if Little John calls himself a journalist. Anyway, inquiry will investigate if Liberal Party helped cover up Cyril Smith's child sex abuse claims. Well, of course it bloody did. He'd have never got away with it had his own party, political party, not watched his back. And some of the people watching his back would also have been into paedophilia. I know what some of them are in that period. What chance have the kids got in the face of this? And here's a story with a lady, a model, Natasha Jayet, a model, socialite, TV presenter, and former contestant on the show Big Brother, she is described as. And she's been found dead. Of course, Richard Littlejohn would never be found dead for exposing famous paedophiles. He wants the whole thing shut down. But it appears she has been. Someone with some backbone, with some integrity. Model who exposed elite paedophile ring found dead after tweet predicting she'd be killed. After trying to expose the paedophile ring, she tweeted that someone may be trying to kill her and noted that she would never commit suicide. Story goes, last year Natasha Jayet, a model, socialite, TV presenter and former contestant on the show Big Brother, came forward claiming she had evidence of a high-level paedophile ring involving VIPs, politicians, movie stars and celebrities. The usual story, in other words. The allegations led to a barrage of attacks against her, including death threats. And this month, she was found dead in a nightclub, prompting calls of foul play by her family. According to the Buenos Aires Times, a local news outlet in Jayet's home country of Argentina, Jayet's body was found in a bed at the Exanu Party Salon at La Nata, in a district north of Buenos Aires City, police have confirmed. Police currently looking into the circumstances of the 41-year-old mother of two's death, including interviewing those last seen with her in the hours before she died. According to local media, Jayet was found naked in a bed at the nightclub with cocaine residue in her nostrils, along with traces of LSD and liquor in her system. In 2018, Jayet made explosive allegations that dozens of high-profile sports and entertainment personalities were involved in an underage prostitution ring. Indicating she feared for her safety, she once went as far as to warn via Twitter that she could pay the ultimate price for revealing dirty information she had on some of the country's rich and famous. After making these allegations of child sex rings, Jake made several television appearances and noted that she received death threats and a slew of backlash. This prompted the former model to go on Twitter to let people know that she would never harm herself. Warning, she said, I'm not going to commit suicide. I'm not going to take too much cocaine and drown in a bath or shoot myself. So if this happens, it wasn't me. Save this tweet, she wrote in April 2018, according to a translation from the Times. That's the difference between people who have the integrity to want to make a difference in the world and Daily Mail journalists like Richard Littlejohn, who want to shut down legitimate inquiry and investigation into elite paedophilia. It's absolutely disgusting.
Every single event that we've done anywhere in the world, there's been certain groups that have contacted venues, made outrageous libelous claims about what David's going to speak about, and have, in many cases, got venues to cancel on us.
They tell the organisers that I'm going to go on the stage and I'm going to say a stream of racist things, none of which I have ever said, none of which am I ever going to say. What then happens, staggeringly, is that instead of coming to you and saying, well, these people have said you're going to say this, you're going to say that, what's going on? They pull the event. And we hear about the event we've been organising for months being cancelled. We hear about it in the media.
In Germany alone, for example, I've been in touch with over 70 venues, and we've still never managed to pull off a Germany show. And there's a venue that we had in Berlin, which to this day, nigh on well over a year, have never actually contacted me to tell me the event's been cancelled. I found out from a German newspaper when they published a story about it.
And my website is blocked in schools and universities and colleges. It's blocked in government departments and government agencies. And here's me, one person, who was supposed to be this great nutter, and the system is desperate to silence what I'm putting out and to stop as many people as possible ever hearing it. Why?